All right, guys, welcome back for another episode here at Rangers Review. Myself alongside Statboy Steven. You guys know the drill by now. Our first episode now in the offseason after the Rangers just fell short of playoffs, as we know. And what can I say? There are a lot of things that we need to discuss. We've been away for a couple weeks, took a little bit of a break given the offseason, but also a lot of things have been going on. So before I go any further, Steven, how are you today, buddy? And I'm going to kind of let you run with what has transpired the past couple weeks since we last recorded.
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. Our last recording, I think, was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, easily.
It was right after the Rangers fired David Quinn.
Yep.
Yeah. And as you know, my girlfriend was visiting at the time. She was sitting on the couch, and she had to be quiet for an hour, which was difficult, but she managed. Yeah, she was quarantining for a couple of days after she arrived in Austria, and yeah, it was also my last 2 weeks in Austria at the time. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. Accepted a new job with a different company. They relocated me to Dublin in Ireland, where I am right now. I arrived here last Monday. I'm in a temporary apartment. Everything is still new. I'm still trying to figure out everything, registering with the government, opening up a bank account, finding a permanent apartment. Weeks in Austria were fun. Proposed to my girlfriend. She said yes. So I guess that's a good thing.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's been Rangers decided to not do anything drastic the last 2 weeks, so I could enjoy the time together a little bit more. But yeah, the last couple of days, we've had the draft lottery and Nils Lundkvist finally signing, so we'll dive into that now.
Yeah, no, we have a lot to talk about, but again, congratulations to you and now your fiance. I wish you two nothing but the best. Two of the biggest Rangers fans I've ever even heard of. And, I haven't even met you guys in person, but I know how passionate you two are. So I'm very happy for you both. And I'm excited now to get into today's episode because a lot has kind of transpired with the Rangers. Slowly but surely, it's kind of been a build-up the past couple of weeks with different things going on. Some of them really went under the radar where you didn't really notice until someone pointed out, and others were very blatantly obvious. So I think now it's a great segue. Let's talk about the Rangers and their latest regarding their head coaching search, because as we know, there was some belief when David Quinn was fired, when Jacques Martin, basically everyone except for Benoit Allaire, because of course that man isn't going anywhere. He's the goaltending guru. There was that maybe the Rangers would be trying to address the head coaching position fairly quick, as they got an interview with Gerard Gallant before the tournament happened with him. Who is he coaching again for the tournament? Do you recall?
Canada.
I'm trying to think. Canada? Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know that he was coaching for Canada, and they got the interview right before that happened. The Rangers have now interviewed Rick Tocchet, the former head coach, and, of course, alumni for the NHL, that being with the Arizona Coyotes, and they interviewed him twice already. Tocchet has interviewed not just with the Rangers twice, he's also interviewed with, I believe, the Seattle Kraken twice, and there's one other team that he's interviewed with twice. So 3 teams already. He's interviewed a total 6 times. And my stance on Tocchet, we talked about it briefly before, I don't love the idea of bringing Rick Tocchet in. I see the upsides with him, knowing that he is a guy that has been helping develop young talent. It's something he's accustomed to during his time with the Arizona Coyotes, but it's still not something that I'm in love with, given maybe some other options out there. So what's your initial stance on Rick Tocchet? Do you think he's in favor of coming to the Rangers, or do you like some other guys out there thinking that they have a better shot still?
Yeah, I'm going to say something that might be a little bit controversial, but I'll explain why I feel this way. I see a lot of Ranger fans saying we need to get a head coach who has won a cup before, because we need a coach who knows what it takes to get there, which I can understand. It's a good reasoning when you look for a coach, but I think, and this is more of a hypothetical anyway, but you're looking for a coach who is going to win a cup with you, not a coach who has won a cup already with a different team. How many coaches have won a Stanley Cup with different teams? I'm pretty sure there's not that many.
No, it's slim.
I know Peter Laviolette made the Stanley Cup final with 3 teams. The Carolina Hurricanes in 2006 when he won it.
Yep.
The Flyers in 2010 and the Predators in 2017.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think it was Sharks in 2016 and Predators 2017. So that's a coach who has made the Stanley Cup final 3 times. How many coaches have made the Stanley Cup final 4 times? What are the odds that he's going to do it again? So I don't think the answer, like the one answer, is go find that coach who has won it before.
Like a John Tortorella.
John Tortorella has won a cup with Tampa Bay, but is he going to win another cup? I don't know. Rick Tocchet, I don't know if he's the right candidate. He's one of the candidates, of course. He works well with young players, and that's the stuff you look for. But maybe after the David Quinn era, they are looking for something else. Because David Quinn's big appeal was that he would work well together with young players. And yeah, I think opinions on that vary heavily within the Rangers fan base.
Yes.
And the Rangers have they don't have to hire a coach right now. No. They can take their time. There are other coaches that will become available once the playoffs are over. A name that has been linked to the Rangers is Rod Brind'Amour of the Carolina Hurricanes, who has really done well with a young team in Carolina. He is probably a good candidate for the Rangers to pursue. Gerard Gallant is probably.
I just want to say, not to cut you off, that is a candidate where that's a pipe dream. I think we could all agree right now.
Yes. And what the Rangers need to do is they need to find their version of Joel Quenneville. The Chicago Blackhawks won three cups with Joel Quenneville as their head coach. They need to find their Joel Quenneville. Don't go out there and hire Joe Quenneville or Peter Laviolette or Mike Sullivan and think that, they've won a cup before, so they can do it again, because that's not really a reasoning that makes a lot of sense to me. But the Rangers, like I said, the Rangers have time. There will be other coaches available. This will be the first big task for Chris Drury as the new general manager. I don't know who's going to be the new head coach, but Gerard Gallant and Rick Tocchet are the two that have been mentioned the most in connection with the Rangers. So you'd have to think that once Gerard Gallant comes back from Latvia, from the World Championships, that he's going to get his second interview, and maybe that's it. Maybe Gerard Gallant is their number one target, and they're going to hire him anyway. Which, if you look at Gallant, there are some pros and cons for me. He works well with young players. He did it in Florida. He really got the most out of the team in Vegas their first year after they joined the league. But there are also a couple of red flags for me. The fact that he was fired in Florida, he was fired in such a weird way. He had to call his own taxi to leave the arena with his bag. The general manager was sending him texts on what line changes to make mid-game. It was such a weird situation. But then in Vegas, he got fired when they were top of the division after getting to the second round the previous season and going to the Stanley Cup final in his first season. So it wasn't like he wasn't performing in Vegas. And it makes me wonder, is there something maybe behind the scenes that made them move on from Gerard Gallant? I don't know. But then again, it could be something that's not a red flag for the Rangers. Maybe it's something he worked on. Maybe it's something the Rangers don't consider an issue. So we'll see. But I think Gallant is the number one target unless a better candidate becomes available. And time will tell if better candidates become available, because that usually happens when teams are eliminated. And the one coach that's still active in the playoffs that I would love to see behind the Rangers bench is Rod Brind'Amour.
Okay. So a lot to unravel there. I want to start off with Gerard Gallant again, because that was a great point. I honestly completely forgot about what happened during his time with Florida and how it ended. And how much are you going to blame that on Gallant versus a guy like their GM and talent at the time? I'm not sure. I don't know the details about that. I would honestly have to do my due diligence. So I apologize for the lack of info there. But regarding Vegas, it was interesting because if my memory's not mistaken, Vegas was off to a slow start that season when they parted ways with Gallant. They weren't having a great start to the year, but they weren't abysmal either. It was a fairly surprising move. And then to bring in DeBoer, of course, formerly from the Sharks, and to see DeBoer thriving with Vegas too, it does make you wonder, what is the main thing about Gerard Gallant that is causing issues with him not having longevity with whatever club he's coaching? That's a great question. And it could be the reason why maybe the Rangers don't land Gallant in the end. And if they do, I'm sure it's something that they will be addressing sooner than later. So now I want to talk about, you're talking about guys where, maybe they're not unveiled yet. Maybe there are guys that are still going to be fired this offseason, possibly, depending on playoffs and other things. And if there's one guy that stands out to me, and you mentioned him, and I want to know more of your stance on him because it doesn't seem like you're in favor, is Mike Sullivan. Now, Mike Sullivan, yes, he does have the track record of winning back-to-back Stanley Cups, but that's not so much why I'm in favor of Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan, he has a familiarity with the Rangers organization, as we know, being a former assistant before he then went to the Penguins to win his back-to-back cups. He's been a very respectable coach in the league, and I've honestly been quite a fan of his, really, since he started with the Penguins. He hasn't been perfect at all. No coach is perfect. But I think if there's one guy that I'm keeping an eye out, that maybe Chris Drury is too, that we don't necessarily know about because we're not seeing their reports, could be a guy like Mike Sullivan should he depart with the Penguins this offseason. There's uncertainty there right now with another year where they have a first-round exit. What are they going to do? Are they going to finally start to get a retool/rebuild? And that's directly going to impact Mike Sullivan. I think we can all agree. And, every coach has a shelf life, and it seems like Mike Sullivan's shelf life is quickly becoming towards the end now with the Penguins. There's been Penguins fans I've seen over the past year or two that have really questioned Mike Sullivan. There's a lot of others that love him because he can really make something out of nothing with all the injuries that they've had, say last year as well. He continues to make this team not just playoff caliber, but one of the better teams in the league. Playoffs has been a different story lately, but Mike Sullivan, in my mind, is probably, if he becomes available, he's undoubtedly my favorite pick outside of guys like Gerard Gallant and even Rick Tocchet. And I think when you look at Rick Tocchet, yes, he has that familiarity with younger players. My concern with him is more so of a John Tortorella factor, just in the sense of he is a very defensively minded. And is that more so because of his time with the Yotes, not really having a payroll and not being able to afford or really properly develop these guys into making the offense as balanced as their defense is? Or is it a situation where he is just normally defense first and it could have a slight impact on the offense? If we look at Tortorella in previous years, there's been a lot of similarities. They've been two of the top teams in the league defensively, but offensively, they've been abysmal. So how much are you blaming the organization there versus the coaching? I think those are things that they should be weighing too, which obviously they're doing. There's no doubting that. But yeah. Mike Sullivan, I want to know your thoughts on him. And then before I ask that, I just want to say on Rob Brind'Amour, again, he's a pipe dream pick. He's phenomenal. Do I think there's any real possibility of that happening? No, I don't. I think you'd have to slap my face and call me silly to say that's going to happen. And if it does, then phenomenal. I think that'd be great. But for a guy that very well could take the Carolina Hurricanes on a deep run this year, again, they're in a series with Tampa, so we'll see how that unfolds. But so he's a phenomenal coach, and he is homegrown with Carolina during his time as a player. So would he really be willing to part ways with Carolina, given the direction they're currently in, which is only upwards with their young talent and in a win-now stage, just for the money? Brind'Amour's made money in his career. I don't think he's concerned about making more money to go to Big Apple and the Rangers. There would be a lot of heavy swaying there. So let me know your thoughts on that a little bit further, but mainly Mike Sullivan, if you're maybe more for or more against it.
I have nothing against Mike Sullivan as a coach, as a coaching option for the Rangers. I did read somewhere that he's returning next season with the Penguins, so he might not be available. But what I meant when I brought up Mike Sullivan before is not that I don't want Mike Sullivan as a coach. I just don't think that the reason should be he has won 2 cups in Pittsburgh, so he's going to be successful with the Rangers, because that's Absolutely. Not that doesn't make any sense. They won that cup, those 2 cups, because they had a healthy Crosby and Malkin and Kessel. And Jake Gensel played out of his mind those 2 postseasons. On defense, they were really good. They had Matt Murray, who played like Dominik Hasek those 2 postseasons. It's ridiculous. He has had his success, but I would never hire a coach for that reason. I would never hire a coach and say, this is my guy because he has won a cup before. That reasoning doesn't make sense to me.
No.
Regarding Brind'Amour, I don't know if he wants to come to New York. I think a lot of New Yorkers, and look, Ranger fans might not like what I'm going to say now, but I know a lot of New Yorkers think that New York City is like the destination for everyone, and everybody wants to live in New York City, and it's like the capital of the world and this and that. Truth is, not everybody has that dream to live and work in New York City. And especially when it comes to sports, there are tons of players and coaches who opt to go somewhere else because they have ties elsewhere. So I don't think necessarily that the appeal to coach and live in New York City will be enough for Brind'Amour, but who knows? We don't know if he will be available. There was news about him signing an extension, but that was later denied. So he is still out there until he signs that extension in Carolina. If I'm Brind'Amour, I would stay in Carolina. You have that young core that you've worked with for years. You know, you've slowly made your way up. And we know the Carolina Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes have been awful for a decade.
Yep.
You know, in the salary cap era, the Carolina Hurricanes make the playoffs once every 8 years, and then they go to the conference final or win it all. That was basically the Hurricanes for 2 decades. Now, the last couple of years, that team is finally coming together. You have that top line with Aho, Teravainen, and Svechnikov. That's one of my favorite lines in hockey. On defense, you have Slavin, Pesce, Hamilton. They have probably the best defense in the league, the deepest defense in the league.
Jacob Slavin is the Lady Byng finalist today at the time of recording this. So there you go. See, so you guys know I talked about him before we even really started the podcast. I'm a huge Jacob Slavin fan. One of the most underrated defensemen in the league and one of the best defensemen in the league. No doubt.
And one of the best contracts in the league together with McKinnon.
Oh, my God. Yeah, they have so many bargain deals in Carolina. That's the thing. Like, they're really taking advantage of what they currently have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they've done it really smart. You know, the way they landed Teravainen from the Chicago Blackhawks a couple of years ago was to take on the
Bickle deal, correct?
It was I think it was Bickle or Boland, one of the two. I think it was
definitely Stu Bickle, I think. Yeah, because of the contract.
No, Brian Bickle, not Stu Bickle.
You're right. I'm thinking of the wrong Bickle. That's hilarious.
Yeah. No, Brian Bickle, they took him up from Chicago because they had cap issues, and the price for taking on that bad contract was Teuvo Teravainen, who's now their top line winger. It's that's how you build, and I wish the Rangers did this a little bit more during their rebuild, but it is what it is. Brind'Amour, if I'm Brind'Amour, I'll probably stay in Carolina, but you never know. You don't know what his goals are. You don't know how persuasive Chris Drury can be. And if living and working in Manhattan is not going to convince a coach, then maybe the prospect of, working with Kakko and Lafreniere and Panarin and Fox and basically this entire young core, that could be appealing to coaches. So we'll see. I'll tell you this though, if the Carolina Hurricanes have a decent goalie in net, they probably win the cup this year. They're struggling against Tampa now, but I think Carolina has a better team than Tampa. The only place where Tampa is better is in net. Yeah.
And that's a great point. And we're going to share our brief thoughts on the playoffs as we get further in the podcast. But, when you look at the whole Brind'Amour situation, just to wrap up the head coaching discussion for this week, it's going to be very intriguing to see how Drury handles things, and truly if he rushes things, or maybe he goes all the way until maybe we get into midsummer and then he comes to a decision. Like we don't know the timetable yet. It could happen as soon as tomorrow, which I doubt. It could happen a week, a month from now. Who knows? But I'm excited for it because there's one thing that I always enjoy about being a sports fan and with the Rangers, and knowing that, yes, are there a lot of concerns possibly with how drastically they change ship? Yes, absolutely. But it's always enticing having that uncertainty where, yes, things could either go terribly wrong or they could go terribly right. And it all kind of starts with the head coach down. So I'm looking forward to it. I know you are too, Steven, but I think that was a great segue to stay on the topic of guys that Chris Drury has fired. And now let's talk about a guy that you have a strong familiarity with, that being a head European scout for the Rangers, former head scout, now in Nikolai Bobrov. So if you guys don't know, Bobrov has been the head of European scouting since around the 2015 season for the Rangers and was relieved of his duties the past week and a half or so now. So, Steven, I know that you had a good familiarity with him. I know that you met him. You've interacted with him plenty. And we've spoken fairly glowingly about him over the past year and a half. So was this a shock to you when this took place? Do you have an idea as to why this happened? Or do you think this is more so of just simply cleaning house because they want Chris Drury to truly pick his own group now under him?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I don't think this was performance-based, simply because you cannot judge the draft picks that have been made from Europe under Bobrov. Bobrov joined the team in 2015 or 2016. So best case scenario, the 2016 draft is the earliest you can judge him. And if you look at the 2016 draft, they didn't have a first-round pick or a second-round pick. And the only player they got from Europe that year was in the fourth-round pick, Tarmo Reunanen, who is a fringe NHLer now 5 years later. Defensemen take longer to develop, so that's fine. If you look at the other drafts, 2017, and now we're already getting to a draft 4 years ago, most players who go to college for 4 years have not even signed their contracts yet from that draft. So just to put into perspective how fresh that draft still is. Of course, Elias Andersson, 7th overall, is a miss. Let's not waste any more time talking about it. They drafted him, it didn't work out. So whether that's on the drafting or on the development, I'm not going to get into that. But if you look at the rest of that draft class, Philip Hedl, 21st overall, was a big surprise. He was a bigger reach than Elias Andersson at 7. Hedl was ranked anywhere from 40th until 65th. So getting him at 21 was a big surprise. But he turns out to be a top 10 pick so far in that draft class. So that's a good pick. And then the rest of the draft class, yeah, you don't have another pick until the fourth round where you get Brendan Crawley. The best European player drafted after that was the Swedish defenseman Sebastian Aho, not to be confused with the Finnish center Sebastian Aho.
Yeah, this is Islanders defenseman Sebastian.
Islanders defenseman Sebastian Aho. I think he played 25 NHL games. So worst case scenario, you passed on a guy who at the time of his draft was already older. He was 19 or 20 years old because he went undrafted in previous years. So are you going to blame Bobrov for not drafting a 19 or 20-year-old Swedish defenseman in the fourth round that nobody even heard of? Jesper Bratt, who was a sixth-round pick in 2016 or 2017, I think. It's so difficult to look at these drafts a couple of years later and go, oh, yeah, we should have picked this guy when they're only drafted in the sixth round. If it really was that obvious of a good pick, why did 30 teams pass on him at least 5 times?
Exactly.
And then you get to the 2018 draft. 2017 draft. We had some European players in the later rounds like Dominic Lakatos, Patrick Virta, older players, 6th-round pick, 7th-round pick. I'm not going to lose sleep over that. 2018 first round, you get Kravtsov 9th overall, which I think is solid. There was talk about Oliver Wahlstrom, but is he really that much better than Vitaly Kravtsov at this point?
I wouldn't agree with that notion.
I don't know. He made the NHL a little bit earlier, but that was a contract situation. That wasn't really because he's better. It's just because he was loaned out to Sweden, whereas Kravtsov was loaned to Russia for the entire season. But you get Nils Lundkvist, who we'll touch on in a second. He signed his entry-level contract now. And then Lauri Pajuniemi in the 5th round is a good pick. Yes. Simon Snellberg in the 6th round. He's still 2 years away from having to sign him because he's in college now. Jakob Ragnarsson in the 3rd round. Yeah, you can maybe argue that was a bad pick, and Olof Lindbom in the 2nd round, but is a goalie. Goalies are always drafted because of Benoit Allaire, right? We've been over this. People say this all the time. Benoit Allaire likes this guy. That's why they drafted. So I don't think that's on Bobrov either. Anyway, then you get to the 2019 draft. That's only 2 years ago. I'm not even going to get into that. Looking at what the Rangers did draft-wise with Europe, I think they did a good enough job for Bobrov to keep his job. But I think Drury just wants to have his own people in that position, which is fine. This is what happens when management takes over. When there's a change in management, you will see that, like you say, they clean house. And you're going to see the same thing in Pittsburgh. They have a new president, a new general manager. There are going to be some changes there. I think Bobrov is fine. He'll get another job with a different team. And we'll see what happens. But the last thing I want to say about Bobrov is that there were a lot of picks from Europe the last couple of years. That wasn't really Bobrov's fault. That was because the Rangers just did not have a director of North American scouting. They didn't have any WHL scouts. They overhauled their entire junior scouting. Before they drafted Matthew Robertson, the last time they drafted a player from major juniors in the 1st or 2nd round was Dylan McElrath. So for 9 years, they didn't draft a junior player in the first or second round. Oh, sorry, Ryan Grubb. So Ryan Grubb.
Yes,
and then,
I was thinking Ryan Grubb. Yeah, no,
Ryan
you're
Grubb,
exactly right, though.
And then Dylan McElrath. So that's more on the Rangers not having the system in place that they relied so heavily on their European scouts. But those European scouts also got us Alex Georgiev as a free agent from TPS in Turku.
Absolutely.
So, like I said, he got fired he got dismissed because I think Drury just wants his own people in those positions, which is fine. I think Bobrov did a good enough job with what he was given. It's important to look at what picks were used. If you look at a 4th round pick, you cannot really expect the same thing you expect from a 1st round pick. So the only bad selection I can point out is Elias Andersson, who we all knew was, that was a bad pick in 2017. But every team has bad picks. If you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, everybody always raves about the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? Braden Point and Anthony Cirelli and Andre Palat, right? That's what they always say.
I already know what you're going to say.
They also drafted Slater Kukuk and Brett Connolly in the top 10. Nobody brings that up.
Yep.
And I'll go even further. If the Tampa Bay Lightning scouts knew that Kucherov was going to be this good, why did they not draft him in the 1st round in 2011? They drafted Nemesnikov in the 1st round.
Yep.
So scouting is not really a sure thing. It's a lot of gut feeling. I don't think the Rangers are bad at scouting. Gun to my head, the worst team is scouting in the NHL is the Colorado Avalanche, which sounds weird, but I'll explain why. The Colorado Avalanche have not drafted a player outside of the top 10 who has played 100 games for them since 2009 in Tyson Barrie. The only players they've drafted since Tyson Barrie who have been mainstays on their team were all top 10 picks. McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen, Makar. They just don't know how to draft outside of the surefire picks. So if you want to ask me which team is the worst at scouting, it's probably the Colorado Avalanche. They're great at trading, though.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they're not a strong suit when it comes to their scouting, but by God, they know how to run an organization now, right? They're going to be pushing for the cup.
You need a little bit of both, or you need to be really good at one of the two. And Colorado is really good at the second part. So.
Yeah, and they don't, and it's clear that they haven't really overthought those top 10 picks, which is at least good because, there are definitely organizations out there in years past where go completely outlandish when there's a clear census of who you should draft at this point within the top 10 for the most part, I'll
say Rantanen is a great pick at 10th overall.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Miko's lighting it up as we speak right now. He's single-handedly dominating the Vegas Golden Knights. It's a pleasure to watch though. Nothing against Vegas. Miko's a stud and it is coincidental enough because Alexis Lafreniere has openly said he models his game in similarity to Mikko Rantanen, and he's been compared to Mikko Rantanen. He doesn't have the same size, but you do see a lot of similarities in his game, which should be very enticing for any Rangers fans watching that Avalanche Vegas series right now. But now, go ahead.
Quickly on Rantanen, if you want to compare him to Lafreniere, do me a favor, go to his Elite Prospect page and look up his numbers the first year after he was drafted, and then the second year, and then the third year. It shows you that you need to be a little patient with players sometimes. Last thing I'll say about Bobrov is, I met him a few times, so I'm not completely, I'm a little bit biased. He's a really nice guy. He always takes the time to talk to me, but I think he did a good enough job to keep his job. I think he'll find another team that's interested in him. And the Rangers, they still have their scouts in Europe, so who knows what they're going to do in the draft.
Yeah.
They could still very well go with a European player in the draft.
And I think this is a great segue now to talk about the draft because, as we know, just over the past couple of days at the time of recording this, we got ourselves a 2021 NHL Draft Lottery. And so far, and I know you tweeted this too, which I thought was funny, it's like Chris Drury, first time as GM, he does not get himself a lottery pick versus Mr. Gordon, who won, the past two lottos. So makes you wonder who's really the better GM here. We're all just joking.
Just to be sure, just so everyone's aware, that's a joke. That's
yeah.
I'm not simply criticizing Drury for not winning a lottery with a 1% chance. Yeah,
exactly. And the NHL, as we know, put in a different format this year when it came to the NHL Draft lottery. So the odds were even further not necessarily in the Rangers' favor. 1%. I'm not losing any sleep over it. I did not expect them to even win. It would have been cool, of course, but I feel like we've been spoiled enough the past couple of years where we can handle dealing with the 15th in a draft, no less, where it's not nearly as star-studded like it's been, especially in last year's draft, and even to an extent the year before that with Kakko. So no problem whatsoever. But the Rangers are drafting 15th this year, and I will openly say I have not been deep diving a lot of the prospects like I know I should be, like I did the past couple years drafts, given my schedule, and I plan on doing that as we lead up to the draft. But there's 5 players I just have listed in front of me. Some of them look like they're probably not going to get all the way to 15th. Some of them are a lot more realistic too, and they're mainly centers. I have one left winger in here, however, because there's Brendan Offman, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name, coming from the OHL, and a lot of different mock drafts that I've seen has been predicted to go to the Rangers at 15th. The left winger looks like he has a very strong two-way game, but then when you look at the centers, I have a bunch of guys listed. There's a lot of centers that can go in a wide variety of places in this year's draft from the first and second round. Mason McTavish is the first one that stands out to me. He's probably not going to land at 15th, but he's definitely a guy that if you can get him there, I'd say you do it. Cole Silling, am I saying his name wrong? Cole Sillinger? Yes. For the USHL, he's another one. Zachary Bolduc from the QMJHL, if you're trying to get that French-Canadian type connection with a guy like Alexis Lafreniere, possibly. And then if you want to go more the Liga side of things and maybe favor a guy like Capo Kakko, there's Atu Ratty. And I want to know your thoughts on all these guys, if you have any background on them, and if any of them seem like that they are more of a feasible pick than others, than what I've listed.
Okay, shoot me a name and I'll respond then.
Okay.
Because I already forgot half the names you just mentioned.
Okay. Well, let's just go one. Do you have a decent background with the 5 that I discussed? What do you say?
Yeah, the first one, Othman, right? I haven't really seen much of him, but the other 4 I've looked into. Yes.
Okay. So you know what, Brennan, we'll put him aside because again, the Rangers' biggest need, as we know, even in a scenario where they land Jack Eichel, which is feeling slimmer by the day in the offseason, they probably need to prioritize centers in this draft. I think we could agree. So let's start with Mason McTavish, because he's a guy that is viewed that could easily be going in the top 10 in the draft, could be dropping out of the top 10. There's a lot of odds are either in favor or against the Rangers, depending on which type of mock-up you're looking at. So what would you initially say about Mason and his game, if at all, and the likelihood of him possibly landing with the Rangers?
Yeah. I think he's going to be gone by the time the Rangers pick.
And that I have that feeling too.
I think McTavish is a popular guy in this draft, and one of the teams is going to go for him. But if somehow the Rangers do land him at 15, it's an interesting situation with him. I think he played in the OHL for Peterborough.
Yes.
Same team as Liam Kirk from the UK. And I think this
last very season, exciting, my ad. Liam Kirk. He's a very exciting player.
Yes. I think this past season he played in Switzerland, though. There were a couple of guys who moved to Europe to play some actual hockey instead of not sitting out the entire season in the OHL. Brent Clark played in Slovakia, which I think was a weird choice. Mason McTavish, I think, played in Switzerland.
He did, and he had himself 11 points in 13 games playing in Switzerland.
Which is, it's good production. But it's I don't think he played at like the highest level in Sweden.
No, he didn't. It was the Swiss SW, which I do not believe is the highest level there.
Okay. No, the highest level in Switzerland is the National League. But still, like I said, getting some hockey in instead of just sitting out an entire season is always a good thing. The experience of playing overseas, I think, is a huge benefit for a young player like McTavish. I think if he's there, then the Rangers should go for him because, in my opinion, he's a top 10 talent. And if he's there at 15, you jump on him. Same with Braden Schneider last year. When a player like that, which you have higher in the draft, when he drops to your range, you jump on it. But I don't think he'll be there. And I have the targets I have. The biggest target I have personally is Fyodor Svechkov, who plays in Russia.
Okay.
He was just moved to SKA in St. Petersburg. Big player, good two-way center. Reminds me a lot of Anton Lundell, actually, in the fact that he's very underrated. He's the best two-way player in this draft class, and I think people focus too much on his defense and don't really mention his offense, which is also there.
Well, I'm sold. I'm already sold. You said Antoine Lundell's name. I'm enticed.
That's the type of player this organization needs in their prospect pool. You have Carl Henriksen, you have Morgan Barron, but if you can get a guy that is already a good two-way player at this age, that's something you go for, in my opinion. But yeah, what were the other names you had written down there?
Because Cole Sillinger. I'm probably butchering his name. I apologize. For USHL, he had a really strong season for USHL. As a matter of fact, 46 points in 31 games, including 24 goals and 22 assists. He's going to be a popular pick in this first round as well. The likelihood of him falling to 15th, I'm not too sure. I think that he might at least get a couple picks ahead. I've seen some mocks of him possibly going to a team like Calgary, for instance. So what's your stance on him, if any?
Yeah, I know the Rangers really like him. The Rangers love bloodlines, and his dad, Mike Sillinger, is a NHL legend. I think he holds the record for most teams played for or most times traded.
Really? I didn't know that.
I think so, yeah. Anyway, good center. Went from Medicine Hat, I think, in the WHL to the USHL this past summer.
Correct.
Made the switch to US hockey, and yeah, he played for Chicago Steel.
He played for the Stampede.
Oh, the Stampede. Sorry, the Sioux
Falls Stampede.
Sioux Falls Stampede. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good center. Probably a little bit more offense than defense. But yeah, if the Rangers are going for a center, then he, Retu, and Svechkov are probably my three targets there. If they go for a center, but who knows with this team, man? They might go for another defenseman.
Okay, well, now let's talk about former Alexi Lafreniere's former teammate and Zachary Bolduc, because Bolduc had another strong season this time in the QMJHL, 29 points in 27 games. The year prior, he had 52 points in 55 games. I'm not sure exactly how much time, if at all, he was playing with Alexi. I don't believe he was on the same line as him. But do you have any stances on Bolduc? Because, I mean, familiarity never hurts. And if the Rangers are trying to look for a connection like that with Alexi possibly down the line, because obviously Bolduc, I don't expect him to be ready year one. He's a guy that I'd say is going to easily be probably I would assume 2 to 3 years away. I could be wrong, however. Maybe it's just 2. So what's your stance on Bolduc?
Yeah, good prospect, but probably not one I would target if it was up to me. Okay. The production is there, but he doesn't really control the game the way you want a center to do. He's sort of a passenger on his line at times, and the points he gets are nice, but what you want from a guy, especially with a first round pick, you want a guy who takes over entire shifts, who controls the game when he's on the ice. And with him, I haven't really seen that yet. So that would be one of the reasons why I would not pick him at 15 if he's there.
Okay. All right. And last but not least, we have a two ratty playing in the Liga right now. In his second pro year as an 18-year-old, he had 6 points in 35 games this year. There's clearly a lot of things enticing about a guy like him to be playing at his age in the men's league and Liga. So what's your stance on him? And then I'm going to share a couple more thoughts on him as well, because I do have a little bit more familiarity with him than some of the other prospects we've discussed.
Yeah, he was ranked the top 3 for a long time in this draft class. He dropped a little bit the last year. Very unfortunate and disappointing that he missed out on the World Juniors. I think his brother was on the World Juniors team. He was drafted by the Arizona Coyotes. Aku, not Atu, but Aku is his brother. Playing in Liga for a kid who's 17 is not always easy. We've seen Kako do it and Line and Barkov, but there's a reason why those guys are top 3 picks, because they were able to dominate in Liga at that age. Puljujärvi was a 4th overall pick for that exact same reason. Anton Lundell should have been a top 5 pick last year. I will maintain that until the day I die, that he should have been a top 5 pick in his draft. This kid doesn't really do the same. He's struggling a little bit to adjust to the pro level, but the talent is there. If you want to go high upside with a 1st-round pick, if you have all the other positions already secured, if you have your left wingers, if you have your right wingers, if you have your defensive prospects, and you really want to go for this boom or bust prospect in the 1st round, he's your guy. There is, of course, the risk that he will bust, but we hear all the time from Ranger fans how they want the Rangers to go for a boom or bust type player. When the Rangers went with Elias Andersson in 2017, that's all we heard. Yeah, I want this high upside player. Okay, if you want that, this is the guy for you.
I think this is the exact time to kind of do a boom or bust, to be quite honest with you. When I'm just looking at the options, and again, this is with me having fairly little knowledge on actually scouting these players this year. So I'm sure if you guys are watching, especially if you're watching on YouTube, let me know in the comments what your stances are on some of these prospects. But to your right, he's been viewed as a consensus top 3 to top 5 pick over the past year and a half, and he fell quite a bit this year. So if he does land to the Rangers at 15, I think that is the exact kind of risk you should be getting. We're taking. He's a guy that can, of course, drive the play as a center into the offensive zone. From some reports I've seen and little clips I've seen of his game, he has been lacking some discipline during his time in the men's league down Liga the past year, and those are some simple adjustments that hopefully will help him get over the edge. And again, I think this is a low risk, high reward, and for the Rangers drafting 15th and the year where the draft isn't awfully deep like it has been years past, why not at this point? I think that would not be a bad pick whatsoever. I'm going to be doing more research on the Russian that you suggested. I'm sure that'll be in favor of him, given his comparison to Antoine Liddell in some ways. I love two-way centers. If you say two-way, I'm like, say less. If this guy can win a face-off too, then by God, I want him big time. But yeah, I'm going to be doing my homework on him. But yeah, Ratty is a guy that I think if the Rangers want to get creative with, boom or bust, as you mentioned, I'm in favor of him. I don't think that he would be a pick I would be upset with by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, but if you ask me what I would do this draft is I would trade down.
You would trade down, okay.
Because this is a weird year, man. Scouts haven't been able to travel to Europe. Scouts haven't been able to see games in person. There's going to be some hidden gems in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round this year, more so than other years. So if you can find a team that's willing to trade up, trade down, accumulate some 2nd and 3rd round picks, that's what I would do.
That's also fair. If there's any time to trade down, not just the current state of the roster, but given the whole, a pandemic kind of happened the past year, so it definitely impacted a lot of players and the ability to scout. That's a fair point as well. Again, I think at the right price for everything, I'm not against that. I'm very intrigued by some of the options the Rangers have at 15. But again, if you can accumulate more picks, maybe you can land guys that were assumed to go in the 1st round, but no, you're going to get him now in the 2nd round. Like, if the Rangers play strategic like that, which I'm sure Chris Drury can and inevitably will during his time as GM, then I say go for it as well. So again, that's not something I'm against. I think with saying that now, as long as it's fine with you, we should segue now into the guy that we mentioned already, that being Nils Lundkvist, as he is coming to the New York Rangers. So if you guys don't know, Steven interacts with plenty of different prospects. He's had the privilege to interview a lot of the Ranger prospects before they sign their ELCs. It's something that he does for himself, and he also does, I believe, for Forever Blue Shirts, their blog. So he's done a lot of great stuff, and he's had a great connection with Nils Lundkvist, as he's not just been connected with him on a personal level. He's been connected with his family. He's done all these different things with Nils. So I know it feels like almost, a brother, a family member that's parting away now, going to the States, but at least he's coming to the Rangers. And what is your excitement for Nils? Because as I've said all along, Nils has been one of my more favorite prospects easily. He's the top prospect in the Rangers organization right now. He came off of another dominant year in the SHL. He's been one of the best defensemen the SHL has ever seen in quite some time. So what's your stance on Nils? How excited are you for him to finally be coming to the States? And do you expect him to make an immediate impact for the Rangers in the upcoming season?
Well, it feels like my son is graduating. And I
Yeah,
know it's weird,
exactly.
but, I've been interacting, like you said, I've been interacting with him and with his family through sheer random coincidence for the last 3.5, 4 years. I just went to a junior tournament in the Czech Republic, and he was there, and met his grandpa. I met his dad, who's the general manager for Skellefteå in the SHL. And it's been fun ever since. Every time I go to a game, to meet up with him afterwards and have a quick chat. And great kid, but he is probably, I mean, he's the best defensive prospect we have. I've always said that, in my opinion, he's better than Keandre Miller. He has more upside than Keandre Miller. He's a better overall player. He was voted a Swedish defenseman of the year in the SHL. Played for the national team, like the men's national team. Was an alternate captain for the men's national team. They are really sad that he's leaving because he was easily their best player this season. I think he's going to make an immediate impact. If you look at Adam Fox 2 years ago, Nils Lundkvist is right there at this moment in terms of age, in terms of readiness. He can walk right in. So yeah, I'm just curious to see what's going to happen. Fortunately for him, he doesn't have the same pressure as Adam Fox, because we already have two defensemen on the right side ahead of him. But yeah, he's NHL ready. He's going to jump right in, and hopefully he gets some time on the power play. But Ranger fans are going to love him. And one thing I really want to say here is, don't look at his size. Don't look at the fact that he's only 5'11". This kid plays like he's 6'4". This kid plays like he's 27 years old. He in the Euro Hockey Tour, he played a game against Russia, and he was playing 28 minutes in that game on defense. It's the most any defenseman has played in the history of the Euro Hockey Tour, which has been going on since 1996.
Not a big deal or anything, Steven.
Before he was even born. So 28 minutes in one game. He was the alternate captain. He's been putting up points for the national team. In the World Championships, he was the best player on Team Sweden. Everyone's saying it. So this kid's ready. And this is not like Capo Caco, who's 18 years old. This kid is turning 21 later this month or next month, July, I think.
Damn puck. I just want to say, I know you've watched far more gameplay than I have in Nils, especially given the time zone difference and all those things. But from everything that I've seen in Nils, especially from this past season, he's so lethal. He's so elusive going into the offensive zone. He takes care of his own end without a problem. He's aggressive as well when it needs to be, but he's not doing it constantly. He's not getting himself caught at all. He does have a lot of similarities to Adam Fox in a way with how disciplined he is, but his skating is so smooth. He's a power play quarterback as well. He's deadly with that right-hand shot, one-timer in the left dot or on the point, however you want to utilize him. And he has that leadership mentality that you've been seeing. Again, as you mentioned, he is going ahead and basically leading the whole club that is older than him without a problem. This is effortless. You can't teach those certain things to an extent. What I mean by that is the confidence. There's some people that when they become a player, whatever sport they become with, they just have that confidence from a get-go. They don't overthink anything. And that's what I see every single time I see Nils touching the puck. And I'm beyond excited for him. And I think to have him in this Rangers decor for this upcoming season, watch out NHL, because you're not just getting a high-flying defenseman to back up when you already have one of the best defensemen, and in my opinion was the best defenseman this past season, Adam Fox. But you have other guys like Jacob Trouba, who had a monster bounce-back year after I've griped on him plenty over this past season. His direction getting halfway through the year and beyond was flawless. Other than his injuries, he really bounced back well. The Rangers have Ryan Lindgren really helped things on the left side. Keandre Miller had some growing pains, but overall was awfully impressive for his rookie year. The Rangers have all these pieces now. So to bring in Nils, when you have that opening on the right side, my God, it really feels like the sky's the limit for a guy like him, and the potential he could bring to have another Lundkvist back with the Rangers organization, and one that could very well be with the Rangers for a very long period of time, as long as they don't consider dealing him away in a big deal. But it'd have to be something remarkable to even consider it at this point.
And that's where I stand as well. you don't want to trade away a player before you know what you have.
Correct.
So they are going to play him. I don't think he's going to get traded. But one of the most impressive things about Nils Lundkvist as a player for me is not when he's on the ice, it's when he's on the bench. And I mentioned this before. When I attend games, I try to sit close to the bench. I like to observe players, how they respond to a bad shift, how they respond to their teammate having a bad shift, how they respond to their team conceding a goal. Nils Lundkvist never sits down. He always leans over the boards. He's always directing traffic. He's directing the defenseman on where to go. He anticipates the game so well, and he just, like a little general, he puts the pieces on the board when he's on the bench. He's acting like an assistant coach almost, and that is super rare to see from a kid this young. What's even more impressive is that his teammates accept it too. His teammates literally. There was one game, I was in Luleå for the game. They played Vecchio Lakers. And there was a play where they were coming for a line change, but their opponent had the puck behind the net and they had a quick breakout pass. So he directed his players to go back on the ice, and they neutralized the breakaway in the neutral zone. And as they came to the bench for the change, they all tapped him on the shoulder for, the input he gave from the bench. And this was in 2019. He was only 19 years old at the time, or 18. No, it was 18. That was before his birthday. He was 18 years old at the time. That was his first full season. And his teammates, and these are guys with NHL experience. These are guys that are 28, 29. They come up to him and they thank him for what he saw and for him directing them back onto the ice. It's unreal to see that, man. I've never been this excited for a Rangers prospect.
And I think that's saying a lot, considering you are the prospect and stats guru that we see on a daily basis talking about these prospects. So putting the bias aside, there's no doubting that Nils is expected to bring quite the impact for the Rangers. So my next question to you before we wrap up the discussion on Nils signing his ELC is, do you fully expect him to make the Rangers roster out of the jump? And do you believe that he is going to have himself a pretty prominent rookie season?
If there are no unforeseen circumstances like injuries, yes. He is the front runner for that third position on the right side. Of course, Braden Schneider is a candidate, but he's 2 years younger, probably needs a little seasoning in the AHL in Hartford, which he'll be eligible for this upcoming season, so that's all good. Lundkvist is the number one candidate to fill that spot vacated by D'Angelo. So, yeah, I think he's going to make the team out of camp. I think he's going to play the entire season for the Rangers. And I think Ranger fans are going to enjoy watching him.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I really am. Knowing that the Rangers are going to have
number 27 is available. So that's good.
Oh, perfect. There you go. I'm sorry, Mac Truck. We got to bring the new 27 in. But I want to say, though, what's that?
It's better than Jack Johnson wearing 27, man.
No, that's true. I honestly forgot about him. But it's such a great feeling knowing that the Rangers are going to have Alexei Lafreniere, Philip Hedl, Capo Caco, Vitaly Kravtsov. Now you got guys like Nils Lundkvist coming in the Reigns in this line. It's basically what the Rangers have built all the way up to this point. It's all truly blossoming before our eyes, but it's actually blossoming and it's actually thriving. We're actually seeing development. Can
we mention Zach Jones quickly, who was named?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to mention him before we came to the discussion.
Team USA lost to Canada today in the semifinals of the World Championships. And when a team is eliminated, they announce the top 3 players of that team. Zach Jones was one of the 3.
That's phenomenal. And we're talking about a Zach Jones playing with a lot of strong NHL players in that lab. So that's awfully impressive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, hats off to Zach. He's another guy. He's my second favorite prospect outside of Nils. So knowing that Zach, he's going to be with the Rangers sooner than later is awfully enticing too. So that's enough for prospect talk, though. Before we kind of wrap things up, I just want to share our quick stances on the Stanley Cup playoffs because it's been entertaining. It really has been. And I gotta say, between the Maple Leafs blowing another first round, which is just a discussion for another day. I'm not even gonna try to rag Leafs fans or anything. I'm not surprised. I'm just disappointed. I think that's how all Leafs fans feel at this point. without showing any true anger or emotion. Now we have the Tampa Bay Lightning versus Carolina Hurricanes. In the East, we also have the Boston Bruins versus the Islanders. At West, we got ourselves an amazing matchup between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Avalanche. I believe that whoever wins that series is going to win it all this year. And then we have the final series, and I'm not sure as to why I'm blanking. Who's in the final series again? Why am I blanking right now? On the West.
You mean the Central Division, which should be
named Central. That's why I'm getting thrown off.
Look, quickly on the division names. I never brought this up before, but how stupid is it that you have East, West, North, and then not South, but Central?
I know.
Who came up with this?
I don't know. The names are always stupid.
The Central Division. It makes no sense. Anyway,
no. And the Winnipeg Jets and the Habs. I mentioned the Habs, but I didn't mention the series.
Yeah. Canadians are up 2-0 against the Jets. Surprising. Scheifele suspended for 4 games. Interesting. I think they're going to make it. I think the Canadians are going to make it to the Final Four. Boston's probably going to.
I had the Canadians winning the division going into this season. Yeah. So, granted, they didn't do that, but they're surprising people now.
Bruins are probably going to beat the Islanders. Unfortunately, I think Tampa is going to beat Carolina.
I think so. As unfortunate as it look, I don't hate Tampa at all. I love a lot of what they've done. It's bittersweet because the Rangers have been on the wrong end of that in playoffs the past half decade. Yeah. But the Hurricanes are so much fun to watch. I'm probably rooting for them in this series, but again, they're down 2-1 right now. Boston is up 2-1 on the Islanders as well, and I think Boston will prevail. Even though I will say it is fun watching Boston versus the Islanders because they are two of the same in a lot of ways with how they present themselves, with being such a defensively minded club. But the main X factor is always going to be the Marchand, the Bergerons, and the Pastas, and I think that's going to help Boston prevail in the end. And Carolina, they're phenomenal. They are absolutely phenomenal. But between not having Vasilevsky and just knowing that Tampa just came off of winning it all, they know what it takes. And that experience is something that can be vital in series like this. I think that could ultimately benefit Tampa in the end. The Habs-Winnipeg series, I think Winnipeg can still come back, but losing Scheifele's a huge blow for them, as we know. And yeah, that's kind of my stances on the matter right now. And Vegas and Colorado. What's your stance on that? Because that's been so much fun.
Whoever wins in the West wins the Stanley Cup this year.
Yeah, Colorado's up 2-1 in that series. Vegas just got their first win off of them. Man, that's been a high flying series. So much fun to watch. But
those were some weird goals some weird goals by Vegas last night.
I know, yeah,
in the third period.
Yeah.
But I think Colorado will prevail. I think Colorado will prevail. Which if Colorado and Montreal win, they play each other in the next round. How cool would it be if Colorado plays in their Nordiques reverse retro jerseys against the
Talk about reigniting the rivalry before you're even in the Stanley Cup Finals. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. It's weird. But this has been a crazy year.
The one thing the NHL should do, the first game of the next season should be the Seattle Kraken against the Montreal Canadiens. And whoever wins that game should be semi-officially winning the 1919 Stanley Cup, because that Stanley Cup was never handed out because of because I think it was the Spanish flu, the pandemic.
The fact that you're not hired already is baffling, Steven.
They should have that as the first game of the season, and they should have like sort of like a joke, but still, have the 1919 Stanley Cup as a prize for that game, because that series I think was tied 2-2, and they never played it again.
I expect nothing less from you, Steven. That's what I like to hear, though. That'd be cool. That would actually be pretty. Imagine if they did something like that. Oh my goodness!
If it's a cool idea, it means that it's never going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. God forbid. We went on our tangents about how to properly handle the league and marketing and all that good stuff. Yeah. So we're not gonna run with it now.
There are 2 ways you can do it. There's the right way, and then there's the way the NHL does it.
So I think same thing could be said with Scheifele getting 4 games, and not that he wasn't necessarily deserving, but it's just the league is so hypocritical with this, and it continued as we know going into this year's playoffs.
It's like they just have a giant wheel. It's like they just have a giant wheel that they spin. There's no consistency. There's no structure to it at all. Oh well.
It is what it is. But I think now to properly conclude before we get out of here, I just want to ask your thoughts on what do you think is next for the New York Rangers? So we'll be recording probably in a week and a half or so next time. And what do you think anything's going to happen with the Rangers the next time we talk outside of just playoff hockey going on? Do you expect a head coach to be hired? Do you any of that, or do you think it's just going to be dead quiet the next week?
I think it's going to be quiet for another couple of weeks until the playoffs end, and then we'll see. There will be some trades leading up to the expansion draft. I don't think the Rangers are going to hire a head coach until the playoffs are over.
Okay, and I think that's fair. Like I said, I something tells me they might be waiting on some other people, but yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I don't think anything happens.
I have a question for you though. Do you think the Rangers should hire their head coach before the draft? Yes or no? Do you feel your head coach needs to be part of that in the room?
It all depends on how long term you're supposedly committing to the coach. I know that we went on our discussion and you've explained plenty of that. No Rangers coaches went more than 5 years for the most part, other than Alain Vigneault. Yeah. I think that's a big factor in it. I really do.
Players need 4 or 5 years to get to the NHL. So
exactly. And
more relevant is it?
To be quite honest with you, I don't think the head coach factor matters at all as long as Drury has his scouts in place. That's what matters to me. You got rid of Bobrov. Okay, so, how is everything going to be settled from going here on out? I think that's most important because I think that whoever the Rangers bring in now, unless it is by some grace of God, a Rod Brind'Amour, if you will, I don't think it's going to be a head coach that's going to be with the Rangers long term at all, to the point where it's justifiable to have them actually having a somewhat of a say in the decision making, if at all.
I'm kind of surprised that, and not that I want him gone because he probably does a good job, but I'm kind of surprised Chris Morehouse is still with the organization, the director of North American Scouting, because he's the son-in-law of John Davidson, who hired him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, but he was only hired a year ago, so who knows? But it's a little bit surprising that he's still there. I expected with John Davidson gone that he would leave too, but
yeah, we didn't even mention, because last time we talked, John Davidson wasn't back with Columbus yet. So yeah, obviously JD is back with Columbus, like he never left. Makes sense. I know I'm probably more of a JD fan maybe than you are, just when it comes to the president side of things, but I wish him nothing but the best in Columbus. I think I'm happy. I was concerned that he was just going to retire from here on out, but it looks like he just gave Jarmo Kekalainen the call again and be like, there's no other place I'd rather be, because they knew that the only exception was the Rangers. It wasn't an event. They didn't take it the wrong way or anything. There was a mutual agreement that JD could kind of go out the way that he wanted to. Unfortunately, for his sake, James Dolan had other plans. So he's back with Columbus now. We'll see how he does. I will say it was a little weird, though, watching the NHL Draft lottery and seeing JD with Jarmo and then Chris Drury, in the other box. It's just, it hasn't fully kicked in yet. I can honestly say that. Yeah,
the weirdest thing is that they did it, like getting rid of Bobrov before the draft just feels weird. Getting rid of your GM and president, like when there's still games going on in the season, that was super weird too. It's messy. It's so messy, It's not
it's the opposite
break.
of class.
Yeah. It's not a clean break. It's just, like they're just doing something.
I know. And again, that's why we have our uncertainties with what the future holds, whether this is a good move or a bad move. Like I said, I'm excited. I love optimism. I'm a big optimistic guy. I'm all for it. I'm excited knowing that the Rangers feel like they're really going to be committed and not just make sure that they make playoffs next year, but try to have somewhat of a run. Whether that's just exiting the first round or not, we'll see. But I'm excited. Just again, like we said previously, thank goodness for Chris Drury. He has a lot to prove. He's controlling everything now as GM and president. But as we said prior, it's also positive that he is kind of controlling everything because he's worked his way up. It's not like he needs to say they're breathing down his neck constantly either. So I'm happy with where he's currently at. And I'm grateful that he did not take other opportunities when they arise to be a GM with fellow teams the past 2 years. So I think if the Rangers are going to go anywhere, it's obviously going to be led by Drury in the near future. And I'm curious what's going to be happening with him and the decisions he makes going forward, because, like getting rid of Jacques Martin in a lot of ways, where Jacques Martin did nothing wrong for the Rangers on paper. He made the Rangers a really sound defensive team this past year. One of the better ones on penalty kill, like he did playing times with the Penguins, with not having any star-studded defensemen per se, defensively speaking, other than Brian Dumoulin is pretty solid and John Marino. But same thing now with Bobrov. You get rid of him, but you're not doing – I really don't think you're doing it for performance. I think you're just doing it for the sake of, all right, I'm sorry, we got to cut ties here. It's a fresh start. It's a new day. I need to choose my guys. All right, Steven just got cut off there. Poor Wi-Fi connection. It must be a Dublin thing. I don't know. No problem, though. We're going to wrap up this episode of Rangers Review, so I hope you guys did, in fact, enjoy. If you did, please make sure to let us know in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to smash that like and subscribe button, as always, and make sure to check us out and leave a review on all of our podcast platforms, whether you're checking us out on Spotify or wherever. So, as always, thank you all so much. And, Steven, is there any final thoughts you'd like to give before we get out of here?
Yeah, one thing I was thinking of is that it's going to be a bit weird if we hire Rick Tocchet after we got rid of Jacques Martin, because they worked together in Philly and they won 2 cups together.
Wouldn't that be so? How funny would it be if they brought him in and then they brought Jacques Martin back in because he's like, I want, that's my guy.
Look, this is why they got rid of Jacques Martin. They want the new head coach to bring in their own guys. Yeah. Fine by me. They tried the other approach in the past with Lindy Ruff. It didn't work out. So I have no problem with the Rangers moving on from Jacques Martin for the right reasons.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree with that too. Again, I think Tocchet is destined for Seattle, given his connection with their GM and Ron Francis. I kind of prefer that, to be quite honest with you too. So we'll see what the future.
Brind'Amour is destined for Seattle with Ron Francis.
Yeah, Brind'Amour is destined for Seattle. There you go. Okay, guys, we're gonna wrap up this episode. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. It means a lot. And Steven, let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.